Good morning and welcome. I'm David Green. This is Pastor Abilities, and we're going to have a great Bible study this morning. It is Tuesday, February 10th, and I am so grateful that you're here. The Sunday we have coming up, the 15th, this Sunday, is the Transfiguration of the Lord Sunday, and there's just some exciting things to take a look at in the text that we have here as God takes promises from the very beginning of the Bible to the very end of time and brings them together at this particular moment. It's a beautiful moment. Before I go on to that, I do want to mention we have a couple of things coming up on the sermon schedule. After this, a week from tomorrow is February 18th. That's Ash Wednesday. And I do have a sermon series for the Lenten season that I'm calling the Roman Roads. And what I will be doing is taking lectionary text out of Paul's letter to the Christians in Rome. One of them will be it'll be out of sequence for the lectionary, but in sequence for Romans going from beginning to end. So it's not exactly a series drawn out of lectionary, but it's really very, very close. I think that's my first Sunday this year departing from the lectionary. While I don't tell people I'm a lectionary preacher, I like to bundle my sermons and package them in ways that people can relate to them as a series. I think that's helpful for, I hate to use the word marketing, but publicity, letting people know what's going on. And so you're welcome to do that or not. My website is being rebuilt right now, so I'm not able to post this on my website. If you would like the PDF file or even a Microsoft Word file, I'm happy to send it to you. I don't even have a charge for it. Just send me an email that says Lenten Sermon Series or Lenten Series, Roman Road, something like that. And I'll get that out to you within a day or so after you send me your email. I think it's fascinating to take a look at how Paul wrote to the Christians in Rome as Jesus makes his journey towards Jerusalem. Often I like to take a series out of, say, Matthew's Gospel from 16:21, when Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. That's actually the text I'm preaching on Ash Wednesday. So anyway, this is what we have going on. Wednesday evening, Ash Wednesday, the congregation in Huntsville, Texas, has 5:30 Wednesday supper. I can't remember if this one's covered dish or not, but we get together for a meal, and the Ash Wednesday observance will be a part of that meal that we share together. And ironically, as we have a meal together, I'm going to speak on fasting. I think in the Reformed tradition, often we have lost some of the beautiful spiritual disciplines that the church was built upon. And so I'm going to talk about fasting. Not something I do very often. Honestly, don't do it very well. So that's what we'll do then, Roman Roads, all the way through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th Sunday of Lent. And then we have Palm Sunday with the text from the Gospel of Matthew. And then Maundy Thursday from John, Good Friday from the Gospel of John. I actually really very much looking forward to this. I haven't preached the book of Romans in quite a while, and it is magnificent. So that's what we'll be doing. Send me an email, david@davidhgreen.com, if you'd like to receive a copy of what I'm doing for the Lenten series. Again, that's absolutely free of charge. I'm grateful to send that out to you. So what we have for this Sunday is the Transfiguration of the Lord. I've put up on the screen a beautiful photograph of Mount Tabor, Mount Tabor. I can't remember how it was pronounced. I think in Israel they said Mount Tabor, but on the top of Mount Tabor is a beautiful sanctuary that was given to the worship of God. Varying faith traditions worship there, but it is a monument of the Transfiguration. And this is traditionally where it's believed that the Transfiguration of the Lord took place. It's an unusually high mountain it's in Galilee, which they have some rolling hills, but in my memory really is more plains. And every time I think of the Transfiguration, I have the words in my head for an old song, and you'll recognize it. This is the last verse as it was originally written It was written during a wartime. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free, while God is marching on. This is the last verse of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And it was a wartime song, originally very macabre song about John Brown's body with that tune. And Julia Ward Howe, having heard that, woke up one morning and wrote out a beautiful poem that we now have as the Battle Hymn of the Republic. We often sing it now as God died to make men holy. Let us live to make men free. But it's about God's glory. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on. And I cannot help but think of that, because with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. That's the question. I think there's a question in there that we should ask. What is it to be transfigured? Of course, being the good guy that I am, I go to a dictionary, Merriam-Webster dictionary, which says to give a new and typically exalted or spiritual appearance, to transform outwardly, usually for the better. To transform outwardly, usually for the better. A spiritual or exalted or spiritual appearance. And that's what I think of with the Transfiguration. But I don't know that it's easy for us to imagine with what it was like for the disciples who were with Jesus to witness such a magnificent event. Today I go to the Gospel of Matthew. This is chapter 17. Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17. I'll be reading the first 9 verses here. Let's see if I can make that just a teeny bit bigger there. Close enough. So Jesus has been with his disciples. He's told them that he's predicted his death and resurrection. Peter has said, "No, this shall never happen to you. Far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Oh my goodness. How often do we do this? How often do we do this? And then Jesus tells his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. Then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom." What on earth does that mean? Matthew gives us a sense before he's done. Now, we read this as 6 days later, and as the days are counted in this particular time, it's the day Jesus said that is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's not a full week later. It's really, in English in the United States today, we'd say 5 days later, because we start counting the next day. So 5 days later, not quite a week. Jesus takes with him Peter and James and John. That's the brother of James, Peter, James, and John. Jesus led them up to the high mountain by themselves. These 3 men and Jesus. There's only 4 of them. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. Okay, this is just such a beautiful, beautiful image here. I'm going to stop and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I don't know why I wanted to make that text a little smaller. Let's make it a little bigger so we can zoom on here. The word used for transfiguration, am I the only one, I wonder, that when I hear the word transfiguration, I think about the old comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, and Calvin had this transmogrifier. He got a cardboard box and wrote transmogrifier across the top, and it would make changes, and it just was a vehicle to unleash the childhood imagination of the comic strip character Calvin and his stuffed tiger Hobbes. Ironically, the smartest person in the comic strip was the stuffed tiger, right? But what does it mean to transfigure? What Matthew literally says is that he metamorphosed, kind of like a caterpillar into a butterfly, the metamorphosis that takes place. That's the verb that Matthew uses here. As he, and notice how it was done. It's a passive tense. Jesus didn't do this. This was done through him. Jesus was metamorphosed in their presence. And part of that was his face shined brightly like the sun. What a beautiful image. His clothes became white like light. And that word light is it's so the phosphorus is the English word we draw from this. Phosphorescent. It could be a white light. It could also be like a firelight. If you've been in a dark night and you've had a bonfire around you and it gives warmth to you, on a cold night, it gives warmth to you. On a hot night, it gives you way more heat than you want. But in a dark night, when you look into the fire, that light that blinds you, that's the kind of light we're talking about here, that phosphorescent bright light, like a daylight or a sunlight. So now you have two different kinds of light here. His face shines like the sun, and the fire is white, like the brightness that blinds you at night. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. We can hardly imagine this. These three men, Peter, James, and John, that's James and John are brothers. They're on Mount Tabor, which is a very peculiar shape, very round mountaintop. And they're with Jesus. And he metamorphosed into something that they can't describe except to say his face is a brilliant white like the sun, a blinding light like the sun. And his clothing takes on a different kind of texture, but an equally blinding light. And suddenly, behold, you is the Greek word. It's okay, and y'all look, it's that second person plural for look. But look, there appeared to them, that's the three men, Moses and Elijah, talking with Jesus. What is happening here? Moses also himself appeared on a mountain sometime before. If you go to the book of Exodus, chapter 24, the book of Exodus, chapter 24, here we go, verse 12, book of Exodus, chapter 24, verse 12 is where we'll pick up. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain, and you wait there, that I may give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment which I have written for their instruction." So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, this is the elders remaining on the bottom with the people of Israel as they wander towards the promised land, "Wait here for us until we return to you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute, let that person go to them. It's y'all figure this out." Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai. The cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he called out to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on top of the mountain in the sight of the people Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up onto the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. You have that image of Moses and Joshua going up onto the mountain, the cloud covering the mountain, the voice of God, just as the voice of God spoke to Moses, calling out of the fire from the bush that was burning but not being consumed by the fire, that thing that captured Moses' imagination while he was tending the sheep of his father-in-law Jethro. Now that same image, only now calling out from the fire of the cloud, and Moses goes up, and the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. The ones on the bottom that were looking up to the mountain, it was like a devouring fire. It is heartbreaking to know how many people in our nation today have experienced a devouring fire on a mountain. I think of the California wildfires, but it happens elsewhere in other parts of the country as well. Once a forest fire gets started, very, very difficult to contain, and the destruction is awful. Having driven through forest fires, as the highways sometimes are open right through the forest fires, things you didn't know you were going to see in life. It's not just the sight of the fire, it's the smell, the smell. And I wonder about this devouring fire. Was there also that smell of a forest fire, that wood burning, that dried wood smell? I don't know, but I can't help but wonder about that. So this is what we read in the Gospel of Matthew really is a parallel. So from the book of Exodus, as Moses had the people wandering through the wilderness, making their way towards the promised land, Moses and Joshua made their way up onto a high mountain. That was Mount Sinai. We don't know which mountain, of all the mountains in that region, we don't know which one was Sinai. But the image is very peculiar, very striking, and the voice coming out of the clouds, and then Moses going up for 40 days, 40 being that number that gets repeated so often, so very often in the story of the Exodus. Here we have, now back to the Gospel of Matthew, Moses and Elijah are carrying on a conversation with Jesus. And Peter says, how do you do this? Excuse me for interrupting. I mean, who interrupts that conversation? Peter does. Peter interrupts that conversation. Jesus is talking with Moses and Elijah, and Peter says to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we're here. It's good that we're here. If you wish, I'll make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Oh my gosh, Peter, what are you doing? You are not living in the moment. You have with you Jesus talking with Moses and Elijah. Hush, listen to what they're saying. We have no record of what they're saying, but we do have record that Peter interrupted the conversation. Okay, yeah, it's good you were there. And so what does Peter want to do? I want to resurrect tents. If you go online and type in Festival of the Booths, Booths, Festival of the Booths, Israel, and you will get lots of booths. People will, even if you live in a condominium, you will construct a small tent on the balcony of your condominium or in your living room or wherever you have space. They are all over Israel in the month of October. And they're very simple structures. Some have sides on them. It's think of a pavilion outside, or a circus tent would be a very large example of it. Maybe you've been to a beach where you see people go to the sporting goods store and they buy those little pop-up covers, and you've got 4 legs and you weigh them down with sandbags, and just gives you a little bit of cover from the sunshine. That's a higher tech, modern version, but that's what Peter's talking about. Here you are with Jesus. His face is shining like the sun. His clothes are white, almost like a lightning, a phosphorescent white, a blinding light. Moses and Elijah are there. And what does Peter think? I'm going to build a tent. I'm going to do 3 of them, one each for you guys. How cool will that be? People can come up and see you. Peter would not hush long enough to see what was happening in front of him. It's good that we're here. Yeah, Peter, it was good that you were there. We have no record of what Jesus and Moses and Elijah had to say to each other, but we do know that Peter interrupted them. Well, Peter didn't interrupt them for long. Verse 5, such power, such power. Peter was still speaking when, behold, let me back up. Before I read this, I'm going to read it differently from the way it appears in the text of the English Standard Version of the Bible. They made some translational decisions here that I don't agree with. I think they've lessened the power of what was said. Peter was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." Did you catch that subtle difference of what I said? In the English Standard Version, behold appears only one time. But when you read the Greek text of Matthew's gospel, it appears twice. And where it appears is very, very important. Remember, that word behold is almost like, boom, interrupt what you're doing. I mean, Peter is still speaking when, boom, something interrupts Peter's interruption of Jesus. A voice from the cloud. Remember Moses, a voice from the cloud spoke to him. A voice from the cloud. This is my beloved Son. And really, it's not even that. This is my Son whom I love. Agape, that the four kinds of Greek love, the greatest. Sorry, I said that totally wrong. There are four kinds of love in Greek. C.S. Lewis has a great lecture on it. You can even still find audio of Lewis reading that lecture as it was broadcast over the BBC. It's called The Four Loves. There's friendship love, there's familiarity love, there's romantic love, eros, which we've over-sexualized in our English language today. But then there's the greatest of these loves, which is agape. That's the kind of love that can only come from God. On this side of heaven, we can't do it. It's the kind of love that would compel someone to die on a cross and bear the weight of the sins of all of humanity, a suffering we cannot even begin to fathom. That's agape love. Behold, interrupting Peter, behold, this is my Son whom I love, whom I agape. And behold, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to him. I know the text doesn't say specifically Peter interrupted Jesus. It just says Peter said to Jesus. But when you have listened to him, that's where I draw that image of Peter interrupting Jesus. It's the voice of God from heaven saying, listen to, hush, listen to him. And Peter had missed that point completely. And so God interrupts Peter twice. Behold, this is my Son whom I love. Behold, I am well pleased with him. And so grammatically you have, this is my Son whom I love, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. And that's the pinnacle of this whole point, I think. Listen to him. Verse 12 is the verse that I'll highlight as I do my sermon. I will go back and make reference to Exodus chapter 24. I'm also going to make a quick jump back to Matthew chapter 3. Take a look at what happens in Matthew chapter 3. This is the baptism of Jesus. Pick up at 13 here. Yep. It's exactly where I needed to be. Jesus came from Galilee to Jordan to John. This is John the Baptist, not John, the brother of James. Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan River. And so he goes, that would be eastward from Galilee to the Jordan, then south along the Jordan River until he gets to where John is, much closer to Jerusalem, to be baptized by John. John would have prevented him saying, I need to be baptized to you. And do you come to me, do you? But Jesus answered him, let it be so now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. This is a fulfillment of prophecies of things happening in the past. Then John consents. When Jesus was baptized, now this could be concurring action while Jesus was being baptized, and it could also be after Jesus was baptized. And if it's after, it could be when Jesus' head breaks the plane of the water. It could also be when his feet touch terra firma on dry ground. It's also possible that John was baptizing by using a shell to pour water over the head. That seems unlikely, but still not unheard of in that day of John. Jesus was washed. Immediately, he comes up from the water, and behold, there's that interruption again. The heavens were open to him, to Jesus. And Jesus saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. And there's that second, behold, a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son whom I love, with whom I am well pleased." You see that similarity? This is, or to translate it as the English Standard Version, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. So, from Exodus, Moses on the Mount Sinai, being called by the voice of God to go up onto the mountain for 40 days. And then when he comes down with the stone tablets, yeah, you got to read it because you just can't make this stuff up. You got to just read it because Aaron and Hur, y'all are in charge. Yeah, they dropped the ball. Then you have Jesus being baptized by John. John really is fulfilling that role of Elijah. And so then you come back again to chapter 17. This is my beloved Son, my Son whom I love, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to him. When the disciples, now remember there's three, Peter, James, and John. James and John are brothers. Peter, the interrupter, is there with them. When the disciples heard this, they fell onto their faces and they were terrified. But Jesus comes to them, touches them, and says, "Rise and have no fear." And when they lifted their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus alone, no one but Jesus only. What just happened? What just happened? There was a metamorphosis, that cocoon of Jesus opening up to this glory of God, face shining like the sun, clothing being a brilliant, equally blinding white. There's Moses and Elijah and Peter interrupting them. Good job, Peter. And now there's Jesus. What just happened? So as they're coming down the mountain, Jesus commands them, "Tell no one of the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead." Now, 6 days earlier, Jesus, in their time, 6 days earlier, Jesus spoke of, "Some of you will not die until you see the Son of Man coming in his glory." And now, a few verses later, Jesus speaks of the Son of Man being raised from the dead. Do you see that parallel now? From when we ask, what does Jesus mean when he says the Son of Man will appear in his glory? And now you have the reference of the Son of Man being raised from the dead. Disciples ask, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come?" And Jesus answered, "Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come." And they didn't recognize him, but they did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands. More prophetic words of what's coming to Jesus. Then the disciples understood that he was speaking of John the Baptist. The prophecy and the belief of the Jewish community of that day is that Elijah will come prior to the Messiah. The belief of Jews today is that Elijah will come prior to the arrival of the Messiah. We believe, as Christians, that Elijah came in the person of John the Baptist, and Jesus is Messiah. And we believe that the Messiah will come again. And part of that belief, I do hold this in my heart, is that when Jesus gets to Jerusalem, he will ride up the east side of that mountain and he will make his way through what are called the mercy gates. Now, they centuries ago were bricked up by one of the Muslim leaders who heard from Jews and Christians alike that the Messiah one day was going through those gates. Well, he can stop that. He put bricks there. Now, I don't know what it's going to look like, but when people say, "Don't you think that we're at the end of time?" I don't. We still have more nations that need to hear the gospel. We're supposed to take the gospel to all the earth. We have more work to do. We're not done with what God has told us to do. And something will happen to loose those bricks. And the witness of Scripture is that it will be a memorable moment, but it will not be a pleasant moment. And I hate to say it, but as I read the Bible, it gets a whole lot worse before it gets done. And I could be wrong. Now, as I say often, if you hear the trumpets blasting and you see the four horsemen coming over the eastern horizon, I'm wrong. All bets are off. But this is Jesus in this text doing a few important things. Number one is his real glory is revealed for a moment, and the disciples cannot bear to look at it because it blinds them. A brightness like the sun, a blinding light, his clothing brilliant white, like a lightning white, a phosphorescent white. The real nature and glory of Jesus was revealed in that instant. Now, you have Elijah also here and Moses coming together. There is also here at this moment this coming together of that prophetic word from the beginning of the story of God to where we are now with Jesus. They're blinded by the true nature of Jesus. They're witnessing the fulfillment of the prophetic word, expectations held for centuries about the arrival of Messiah, about the arrival of Jesus. And they don't understand. Now, okay, I'm hard on Peter here because he had the audacity to interrupt Jesus. Instead of recording what was being said, he interrupted what they were talking about. But I think we should forgive that, because who among us honestly could do any better? Who among us could do any better? We struggle to see the glory of God just as well. So this is the transfiguration that we have here. I'm sorry, taking a quick look through my notes, making sure I don't miss anything. So verse 5 is the verse I highlight because, verse 5 really summarizes all of this very beautifully. Let me shrink it down a little bit. It's going to be tough for y'all to see online, but come on, scroll back. 6 days, Jesus is with James, Peter, and John. They're up on a high mountain. They're all alone. Jesus was metamorphosed in front of them. Transfigured is the word we take in English. I don't know that we do any better when we see the glory of God. How often do we struggle when we see God at work in our lives and we don't get it? We don't understand. But here we have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful explanation. When Jesus is speaking, a bright cloud overshadows them. Or when Peter was speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed him and interrupted him. Maybe we should pray for something to interrupt us. Maybe this is the text that's supposed to do it. From heaven above, this is my beloved Son. This is my Son whom I love. My Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Listen to him. I think we struggle to listen to the voice of God. As we approach the Lenten season, the Wednesday after this sermon is taught or preached, for me and other Christians around the world, the Wednesday after that is Ash Wednesday. Now, where I live, there's a lot of emphasis put on Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday. The old tradition was you would empty your house of all of the fats and all of the liquor and all of the stuff you shouldn't be eating during the Lenten season. And so they call it Fat Tuesday because on Tuesday you make pancakes and you put everything on it. You eat it all. Get all that stuff out of your house, all the fatty foods, get it all out. And then Wednesday is a day of fasting. It's probably easier for Wednesday to be a day of fasting if you're hungover with a headache and nausea, but that's not the same as listening to God. Listen to him. Listen to him. The summary of all of these verses brought into one sentence: listen to Jesus. Listen to him. As you teach and preach this text, as you read this text as a devotion for your own life, there it is. Listen to Jesus. It's a beautiful image, and take time, read through the Gospel of Matthew. Focus on this text. Spend a couple of days with it and let God speak to you. How do you interrupt God? Where do you not understand God's actions? Where have you seen the glory of God and interrupted it? Don't we all? But most importantly, listen to him. It will be awkward and uncomfortable. But as you say your prayers, don't just give God the grocery list of, I got 5 people who need to be healed and a couple who are struggling with this. And no, take time in your prayers and listen to him. A marvelous book you might use, I should have called it up or gotten a copy off my shelf to hold here for you. It's written by a man named Bob Beaudine, Beaudine, called Two Chairs. Two Chairs. Two Chairs is a great book. Bob is one who believes in the morning you should have a devotional time together and do that in 2 chairs. And then after you read your scripture, ask God, okay, so what's going on today? And maybe you have a hard day coming up. Maybe you have difficult doctor's appointments. What an odd thing for me to just have pop into my mind. Maybe you're going to testify in a trial or to sit on a jury. Those can be very difficult days. Okay, God, what's the plan for today? And that's where you can look at your calendar and see what the plan is. And then ask the second question. Can you handle it? And then hush and listen to God. Unless you pray in such a way that God can interrupt you and say, no, or hush, or this is my son, my beloved son, the one with whom I am well pleased. Unless you let God have that space to interrupt you and guide you, you're not praying, you're talking. And those are very different things. Prayer is a conversation. And then prayer is not just your words at that moment, it's your actions. If you pray to lose weight while you're eating a box of donuts on Fat Tuesday, you're not praying to lose weight. God is not going to override your decision to eat the box of donuts. So don't eat a box of donuts on Fat Tuesday. Pray in such a way that God can interrupt you and guide your steps. And you will be amazed at what God can do. This is my son, the one who is beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. I'm David Green. This is Pastor Abilities. You've made it this far with me. You've hung in there more than 30 minutes. If you would please take a moment and smash the buttons down below that are for like and subscribe. It would be very helpful. Feel free to send this video to others that they may take a look at it as well. I've talked about how to teach it and how I intend to preach it on Sunday morning. But this is, I think, a great lesson for all of us to have. If you'd like to hear the sermon after Sunday, next week is the week I will begin posting my sermons again on Life and Faith Together. It's a podcast where I can post my sermons. Or you can listen to it at the First Presbyterian Church, Huntsville, Texas. You can find the links through my Facebook account to get there. Huntsville, Texas, First Presbyterian Church. We do a live stream on Facebook and YouTube of our worship service. We'd be glad for you to be there. When you see the front 3 rows empty, don't be deceived. My people sit in the back half. Makes me crazy. Can't change it. But be that as it may. Smash like, smash subscribe, and come join us on Sunday morning or find the sermon to see how I did with it after Sunday, Life and Faith Together. I'm David Green. This is Pastor Abilities. Preach the word, my friends, and may God bless you and yours. Amen, amen, amen.